So I have a question for you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Do you think you could beat Ohio State without a good deep ball?
Well, to be honest, Mike, I don't think they're going to beat Ohio State with any ball. Yeah, I just don't see it happening. Ohio State is such a different level of football, and Oregon's trying to get to that level. And I'm not trying to diminish what Oregon has been doing and what they are, but I just think Ohio State it's a tough call. I thought last year, if you brought back the defense that we thought we were going to have, if you brought back all the kids we thought we were going to have, all the players we were going to play, I thought we could have it pretty close at Autzen. But even there, I thought, late in the game, I mean, I've just seen it up and close. I thought in 2010, Oregon had a chance, a couple plays, fumble out of the end zone here and there. Ohio State won, went to that national championship, thought we had a chance with that one with the Heisman quarterback, ended up losing by 20. So I see through the lens of until we beat Ohio State, I can't see it. I mean, I think it's 0-9 in the lifetime of the series. But Ohio State's just a machine, and then going back there this year, first year back off of COVID, it's going to be hyped. I see Ohio State. If Oregon can get into halftime close, I think they can come back with no moral victories, but at least go out there and make a good showing of it.
So from what it sounds like, you think we're not going to really keep it close.
Well, I think in the fourth quarter, Ohio State's going to, anything can happen. Again, I'm obviously rooting for the Ducks. I think the Ducks are going to it's going to be a great opportunity. I'm not going back there. I'll tell you that much. I'm not spending money to go back there. I do think it's going to be a rude awakening for some people who think that they're going to roll in there and get a victory. Ohio State just plays a different level of football. I mean, ask the Big Ten. They've been trying to beat them for years. So
it's an interesting recent series. If we just look at the last two games that Ryan referenced, not the entire 9, and we can go back into the 80s. And of course, that has no connection to what's going on today. But the programs, especially Ohio State's, is pretty much the same program as the national championship team in 2014. Ryan Day has got it humming along that Urban Meyer trail. But what's interesting to note is I believe Oregon was right around a 5-point favorite in both games, the Rose Bowl and the national championship game. And especially going into that Rose Bowl, there was a lot of talk that that Oregon, just not just from a speed standpoint, but the speed of the plays, the running of the offense, that it would be difficult for Ohio State to keep up. And I remember that conversation going into the national championship game as well. And if I remember correctly, Oregon took it right down the field the first series of the national championship game and scored quickly, and Ohio State was on its heels defensively. Now, if you look at the two rosters, even though Oregon churns out a number of NFL players, Ohio State's usually sitting first or second in NFL players. And that was kind of my conclusion in predicting both of those games and predicting Ohio State to win, not comfortably. And the second game was a little more comfortable at 42-20. But I just thought, okay, which one of these teams is going to have the most NFL players long term? And it's not even going to be that close. And it was Ohio State. It's an interesting. We shall see in Columbus. I'm somewhere in between both of you because I tend to think, like Mike, that it should be a pretty good football game.
I would agree. I think the changes of this team compared to those other teams is up front. I think that if Oregon's offensive line and Oregon's defensive line can hang up front, then yeah, we're in it. I mean, I think you win in the trenches. So I do think that, like Mike said, you got to win with a deep ball. You got to throw the ball deep. You got to be able to keep a defense honest, but you got to be able to hang with these guys up front. And Ohio State is classic for having great defensive linemen, great offensive linemen, and really good running game. So if we can stop the running game and make them make some plays, I would agree. I think it's be close, but I got to give it the hand to Ohio State going into it. I just, realistically, if I was a betting man, I would not be putting money on Oregon.
So I think the biggest change is depth, because if you look at that 2014 Oregon team, trenches weren't exactly a weak spot. If you go look at the linemen on that team, there's like 6 who've made the NFL. Right. 3 or 4 had fairly good NFL careers and are still in the NFL. But when you lost one of them, the issue was the drop off from that first guy to that second guy was just so massive.
Well, and the attrition that year was really tough, losing Darren Carrington with the weed suspension. I mean,
Devin Allen in the Rose Bowl.
Devin Allen in the Rose Bowl with the knee injury. I mean, there's 2 wide receivers right there that you really needed. And yeah, you're right. Depth has always been an issue. My dad used to say that, about the 80s, if they lost one player, they were done. The year we lost Bill Musgrave, had a great season and all of a sudden lose the last 5 games or whatever it is. Broken collarbone.
Adams effect.
Yeah, and oh golly, we've seen it worse than that. But yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, look at the depth just in the wide receiver room alone. You could lose the top 4 wide receivers and still be pretty strong, I feel like. And I think that goes back to that recruiting thing we talked about of stacking up 3 or 4 different recruiting classes together. You've got real talent here. You've got guys who are transferring out of here that were starting before. I mean, the fact that your starting quarterback last year transferred says it all. I mean, your recruits are coming in hot. So,
and he transferred to a Power 5 school.
Yes, and he'll have a good year. I truly think Tyler Shough will have a good year this year.
A lot of the times it used to be if Oregon players were transferring, they were transferring to a junior college.
Right. Exactly. So, yeah.
Where I think Ryan also speaks to the gap in the last game in particular, but really both games, the Rose Bowl of 2010 and then the championship game of 14-15, is that, so for example, Ohio State and Michigan, last year's NFL draft, both had 10 players taken. Well, we know that there's a gap between Ohio State and Michigan, and it's substantial. There's a difference between having players drafted like Michigan. All their players were drafted in the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds, and almost all of Ohio State's players were taken in the first 2 rounds of the draft. There's a difference. Like, if you look at that championship game, Ezekiel Elliott then steps into the NFL and wins rushing championships. Michael Thomas steps into the NFL, and he's got the most prolific start in the history of the NFL in terms of catching passes and yardage. And 3 secondary players for Ohio State were first-round draft picks. Just pretty insane talent on both teams. But, it's difficult to keep up with where we are right now, Alabama, Ohio State, and then to a lesser degree, Clemson and Georgia, just in terms of recruiting rankings year after year after year after year. But Oregon's catching up.
But I'm not mad at it. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who are, they want the equal playing field. They want this, that, and the other. Hey, these guys have always been good. Go beat the best. You want to be the best? Beat the best. I have no problem with Alabama stacking championships. If I was a top flight recruit, I'd want to go there too. Why wouldn't you? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to think that just because, recruits are prone to go to one school or not, that the rest of the country is going to hate on that school. That's not the case. Heck, that was like that. Go back in history. Notre Dame had it for years. All the kids wanted to go to Notre Dame. Georgia had it, whatever. Anybody else, go back in time. And right now they're just being dominated by these other groups. If Pac-10 can make some noise this year, they might be able to get themselves back into a conversation. If Oklahoma could win one of these games in the Final Four as well, they get themselves right back into this thing. Texas is very close, so you never know. It could be cyclical. The next 10 years, we could see some new blood.
Yeah, I think that all ties into this is obviously opinion based here. So I don't know when there is that gap between Ohio State having tons of 1st and 2nd round picks on their team and the depth gap. That's still there. It's not as bad as it used to be, but it's still there. I don't think a quarterback who can't throw it deep can even at his best win you that game. Like you need somebody who could go and win you that game, because if it's just straight talent on talent, odds are we could still win, but odds are we don't. You need someone who will carry you over that hump, someone who will take you over that to win that game.
I agree. And you never know. I think we could see something happen this year. I think we didn't really get to see what we thought we could see with Anthony Brown. I thought you were going to see Anthony Brown early on in the year last year, showcase some of his skills. We never saw that. What we saw late in the year was fine from my perspective. But we could see something happen this year, and the coaching staff, they're going to put the guy out there that makes the most sense. If it's Ty Thompson, the freshman, if it's Jay Butterfield, the sophomore, who I felt like looked pretty good in the spring game, or Robbie Ashford, who looked good in the spring game as well. They're going to put whoever gives them the best chance to win on the field, no matter what the circumstance. So I tend to think you're going to see something exciting from the quarterback this year.